Hello, welcome to another edition of the Paragliding Debrief, the podcast that aims to take you into the heart of the paragliding world. As always, I'm your host, Lee Trihorn from the Free Flight Academy. We've got a very special edition coming up, this one, and it's a great one. It's our first one of the new year. It's one I recorded quite some months ago, but thanks to COVID, all the other situations that go along with it, it's taken me this long to bring it to you. But it's a great way to start off the new year. The Paragliding Debrief is going to come back this year. We've got an incredible list of people coming up for you, but we're going to start the new year with this one, a candid interview with Takats. The most candid interview I think I've ever heard him give. He's a very good friend of mine. I've known him for a very long time. He's been an inspiration in my flying to get me to where I am. He doesn't need much presentation, so let's get going with the recording that I made with Pal. Now, bear in mind, this was a little while ago now. It was while I was stuck in Australia, not able to get home. He had just got back from Colombia, and for various reasons, it's taken a little while to finally get this together. But here we go. I apologize also if the audio quality isn't great through various parts of our recording. But again, I was stuck miles away from home with a gaming headset, and that was about all we could do at the time. So without further ado, tune in. Let's get the candid interview with Takats.
And action. Thanks, Lee, for inviting me for this talk.
Absolute pleasure.
I'm a little cold here in Austria. I'm used to the Colombian climate, and now I'm freezing.
It was literally what we're on now. We're at the end of May. At the end of February, you and I were stood outside a bar in Beer de Chinche talking about what we were doing. You were just coming to the end of your winter season. We were just coming to the end of our Colombia trip. We were talking about where we were going, what we were going to do. How much has life changed in 3 months?
Oh, man, for sure. I mean, a lot of things changed in the world, as we all know. And luckily for us, this corona craziness hit us in Colombia, where, as you know, we have a little property and we were able to work there quietly, and we didn't actually get much of the real life craziness of this. So, and then, you know, our flight got canceled for the end of April, and then we were like kind of hanging in the air for quite some time, not knowing when we're gonna be able to come back. And then we heard that probably Avianca, that in the meantime went bankrupt, is probably not going to fly till like August. Anyways, I wrote the embassy, and they got back in touch luckily the next day, and so they put us on a flight, on like a humanitarian flight, taking back Europeans to Europe, which was quite a fortunate timing from our side.
Was that a full flight? Like, who was on that flight? There was obviously you, your partner. How many foreigners were on that flight that were stuck there?
Oh man, it was full. It was a regular intercontinental plane, and full of Europeans and probably some Colombians living in Europe with European wives and husbands. But, you know, we were expecting that they're going to leave the middle seats open for social distancing, but there was nothing like it. It was full. And in fact, we know from the embassy that there is like two more planes full of European people who want to go home and still out there waiting for the next round.
I mean, it's something that's affected, you know, as I said, when we were talking in February, life was completely normal, and so quickly life got turned upside down. But for everyone who's had a COVID-19, a quarantine experience, there was a video I saw of you that must have been the funniest thing I've seen. Of you have a flying site in your garden, pal.
Yes.
You have a takeoff. There you were doing something, and there's a great video. Is it on YouTube, I believe?
Yes.
Yeah, there's a great video on YouTube that people can find where
It's
you're doing your gardening.
Quarantine Dream.
There we go. You have to look it up because it's a little ray of sunshine in this kind of quarantine nightmare, where you can literally just pack up what you're doing, go on into your garden, onto your launch, take off, go flying thermaling, and top land back in your garden.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's why I got fascinated with this piece of land, because it's not very remote. It's not high up on you know, like the regular takeoff altitude, but it's just high enough for this kind of fun in the right moments.
It's a beautiful place. It's a place called Pier de Cinche. It's a wonder. It's one of my favorite flying sites in the world. I've got to be honest. It's a cracking flying site.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's beautiful. The conditions are rather, friendly and mellow, not like in Val d'Agno where there is, some crazy thermals going on early in the day. But the backwind doesn't come in from the Pacific wind, so no cables, no power lines. So it's really much more relaxing. The only thing is we need to sort out is the airspace, so we have a little more room to fly.
Yeah. And how long have you been there? Because Colombia's kind of become your second home.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, in the meantime, some people even think that I'm living there full time, but that's not true. I'm just living there during the European winter season, or like it was now the third time we went from November to April, and this time a little longer. But yeah, it's cool because in the European winter time, unless you're down somewhere in Andalusia or southern Italy, it's weather is not so good. I like winter sports and stuff, but I'm not such a big fan of it, and I like warmer temperatures, and that is also where we can do some work and we can live fairly cheap. So it seems to be a good combination.
Yeah, I mean, we run trips there every year. It's a wonderful place to fly, and it's a great place we always say dodge the winter to avoid the winter. It's an amazing place to fly.
Yeah, you are doing pretty good at this too.
Yeah, we just chase the sun all year. I love winter, but as long as I don't have to be there for it. And one of the things that I wanted to look at this podcast is not, your name, Paul Takats, is a name that everybody knows or should know in the sport. It is a name that now I think it's fair to say has become a legendary name in the sport for what you've done in the sport. A lot of people know that. What I want to do in this podcast is have a chat about what you're doing now, after the glory days of all the Acro and then moving across into cross country. You've had, now it's fair to say, a very long career in paragliding and a very busy career in paragliding. And what I'd like to kind of get to do, if possible, is just have a look at who the Paul Takats was before paragliding, like how you came into paragliding, what the mindset of someone is, just in life in general. Because, you've become a world champion. You've been in the Red Bull X Alps. There's so many things that you've managed to achieve through the paragliding. I mean, you fly the paramotors in the Red Bull Air Race.
I did.
You did. Is that something you don't do now?
No, it's over. They stopped the series.
Okay. What a shame. Me and my dad were a massive fan. We saw you a couple of times at Ascot in the UK.
Yeah.
I'm a massive fan of that. An amazing thing to be a part of, and an amazing way to represent our small
I just
sport.
released a video of that like 2 days ago. There's another YouTube. Yeah, you have to have a look.
Yes, I'd encourage everyone listening now to check that out. I mean, it's amazing to be able to get on such a world stage and bring our sport into the kind of life that you've managed to bring.
Yeah, that was a nice thing to do. Exactly, to be able to show what we are doing to a different, the broader audience. That was a nice motivation behind it too.
And do you still enjoy it now? Flying for you after all these years? I mean, if I'm right, you started flying in, I think, 2001. You discovered paragliding.
Yeah.
And in 2003, you got your ticket. You kind of qualified.
No, actually, right? In 2001, in autumn 2001, I did my basic course, but then I was still a student. I was just 16 years old back, and I didn't really have the money and the time, but I did the best I could to at least, my dad sponsored me an old shitty glider, so at least I could fly a little bit, and at least I could ground handle a little bit, which was an extremely helpful activity for that time, because actually then my instructor prohibited me to fly the glider because it had only 1 second of porosity in the
right.
So I got kind of stuck on the hill, on the small hills and on the flat ground playing with it. But I think it was really, really probably the best and most important Kickstarter I could have imagined doing. back then it was a little bit of a hassle because I really wanted to fly, but in fact the ground handling itself teaches you so much more and makes you become a much better and safer pilot so much faster.
Do you know, that is so true, and something you've just said is the really key, and it's something that us instructors talk about so much. Ground handling is the absolute key for glider control. Everything you can do on the ground with the way the glider moves is very similar to how it moves, what it does in the air. The brake inputs, the movement of the glider, and it's the bit that a lot of pilots neglect is they don't do enough ground handling. And it's the way to really progress your skill in the air.
Yeah, totally true. And I mean, I don't know if it's for some it's maybe an issue of laziness, or for some it's an issue of lack of time, or for some it can be an issue of lack of suitable place. Because, for example, here in the Alps, you have nice grassy fields like everywhere in the valleys, but you cannot enter them because the farmer is gonna come shouting at you. So it's not so simple always.
Yeah, for sure. And you started in 2001, but your love of kind of sports in general before that was actually, weirdly, rather than being overground, was actually underground. You were a really big caving enthusiast, so you did a lot of stuff underground before you ever did anything overground.
Yeah. Actually, I was still caving quite seriously when I started paragliding, and some more time. I was caving for 4 years in total, like pretty much every week, and even during the weekdays, because I grew up in Budapest, so it's nice caving there. And so we with our crew, we went pretty much every week to one of those caves, and on the weekend we did some bigger trips and jump on a train, or some of them had a car and went to other mountain ranges in Hungary where there is even more serious caves. And I found it extremely fascinating for many different reasons. I don't know. It was, first of all, I was super young. I was 14 when I got into it, and I liked to be. I mean, it was nice to be with people from older generations. I don't know. I was maybe as a child, I was a little bit. I didn't always find friends from the same age, or it was just not so fun, or I don't know how to explain. But somehow I felt more comfortable in the company of a bit older people, and it was a really, really nice time learning so many things. I mean, not just going underground, but everything around it, because it was basically, packing up your big backpack with all the equipment, with your tent and sleeping bag and cooking stuff and even food and water, and then go up to a mountain, hike up and spend a couple of days up there, and then go caving. And, it was like a camping caving experience, and learn to be independent and learn to deal with risk and all those dangers associated with it. Because, to be honest, going underground is super serious business. I mean, that is like, you are down under, and it's not like, there is a back door with exit on it. It's like every step you take down, it's the exact step you need to go the opposite way to go to the surface. And it's maybe a little bit similar to diving, which is, I mean, you're down there and you're down there. It's nothing should and can happen, because I mean, you're totally relying on your bodies. That's why actually the rule is only a minimum number of 4 can go down into a cave. In case something happens, then you can fulfill the safety procedures. I learned so many things. And then, there's different types of caves, the ones that you just go in and climb and hike through.
Yes.
And the others, like vertical ones with big pits, where you have to build in like the whole rope system, and then you rappel down and then go to the next one, rappel down. And that's something kind of scary, but super exciting at the same time.
Yeah.
And I guess that was for sure a really nice experience, learning about risk management and fear and all these kind of things.
It's really interesting to hear you say so. All of this was before paragliding came along. And yet what I see when you're talking about the hiking, the living in the mountains, the dealing with the risk, much later on in your career, you ended up doing what? I think, was it 2 or 3 of the Red Bull X Alps races?
2 times.
2 times. And it's almost like there was a lot of preparation done for that in your early life before paragliding came along. The Red Bull X Alps is just an extension of something that you'd already done, a mindset that you were used to living in, you'd already kind of prepared for without even realizing you were preparing for it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I truly believe that a lot of things are extremely interconnected, especially in the extreme sports environment. I mean, I did some skydiving and a lot more base jumping and the caving before and paragliding and all those craziness. So I can really tell from my own experience that if you come from any other sport or activity, that, I mean, it's now talking about extreme sports, especially, because is what I can tell.
That's brilliant that you say that, Paul. If I can, I want to take you back to 2010, where I first met you. I met you in Switzerland. You were running a debag course, and I came with a couple of other guys. Do you remember that? That was for me. That was just starting off in my whole adventure in paragliding, as it were. And you were teaching me and a couple of other people how to do the debag, and then we were dropping off. It was an incredibly fun weekend, and I had a couple of days extra on the end before I was off to Turkey. And I remember you, and this is something I'm going to tell you now that I don't think you'll ever have realized. But after all the debagging stuff, you made a flight down from the mountain, and I really enjoyed Acro at that time. I hadn't really had a chance to see any of it up close. And I watched you come down, and you did, for me at that time, a really nice run. You did a twister, a helico right, helico left, into something else, some beautiful transitions. Mm-hmm. You landed, and I remember thinking, that was incredible. And you walked past me, and I went, hey, pal, well done. That looked great. And you were really frustrated. And you just looked at me and went, yeah, man, it's because you don't know what you're looking at. And what I realized at that point, but what was brilliant about that is I realized I enjoyed Acro. It was great. I liked going up and having a flip around, and I think if everybody admits it, whenever they're doing any kind of sport, in the back of their mind, they think, maybe one day I could be world champion. For me, I was never going to have the focus or drive, but everyone always has that thing in the back of your mind that, maybe I could be good at this. And then when you said that, it was like, I could see a completely different level of focus, and it was a really humbling comment that actually shaped me for a long time further. And it was something you would never have even thought about or known. I mean, that was 2010, we're in 2020, that was 10 years ago. But it was at that moment when I looked and I went, you're going to be world champion. There was a level of focus in you at that point that was, you were really annoyed. It looked like a very clean run, but whatever you saw in that run, it wasn't quite right. It wasn't clean enough. It wasn't right. It wasn't on axis. The exits weren't perfect enough. Only a really trained eye would see. And it was totally different to any acro pilot I'd seen at that point. The focus that you had and the discipline that you had was incredible. And then the next day, you were working for a school there, and you were getting students off the hill. And I had a day. We were just hanging around on the hill. And at the end of the day, you flew down and I flew down. And I was just watching you. And you did what I now know to be the cork. You did a spiral to wing over. And then as the glider was completely underneath, it did a full 360 spin. Yeah. Which absolutely blew my mind. And I remember looking, going, and then you carried on flying, landed. And for that entire evening, I didn't know if I'd actually seen what I saw. And that was then what became the cork. That was a year, I think, in 2011 was when all the tricks kind of came onto the scene. And it was your level of focus at that point and determination that was really clear to see. How did you come up with tricks like that? I mean, where did that come from?
Yeah, well, it all basically came from, it was kind of a natural evolution. I mean, starting to fly and getting into aerobatics and discovering the Gerlitzen and then Orgagna, and then learning basically all the all the existing maneuvers back then, and then being able to take that to the top level and collect 2 actually World Cup champion overall titles. So it's not World Championship, but World Cup overall.
Yes.
And then came that moment where basically I was able to execute everything pretty much, with a very, very good percentage of clean execution. So I mean, it may sound a little silly and stupid, but it just basically became somewhat boring, because if you are serious into Acro, then you have to do the same things over and over again, repetition, and try to get rid of like the smallest mistakes, and when you can already perform everything nicely and clearly, and then you need something else, you need something new. That we are coming back a little bit to this adrenaline and dopamine thing. Like, you remember the first thing you did, the first flight down from the training here, how freaking excited you were, how freaking nervous you were, and then you do that like 50 times, and then you're like, okay, and now what? So then you go to a higher here, then you go to a higher launch, and then you always add something, something that keeps the excitement. And of course, if I would be just doing top to bottoms, then probably I would not fly anymore, because at some point it is just always the same thing. I mean, it's never the same thing, really. But
it loses its excitement. When I did my first balloon jump, it was the most exciting thing I've ever done. Stood on the edge of the basket, doing my first rollover, and then the second one was disappointing, because it was it's still a cool thing to do, but there wasn't that real exciting. I kind of knew what to expect. We rolled over. It was cool. So then you start thinking, how can I make this more exciting? What else can we do? And you start thinking of other ways. You're chasing that feeling of adrenaline.
Exactly. Let's come back to this one later on. But so basically, then it's not where I started to think about new moves. I always been thinking about new moves, and but basically because there was nothing else to add and nothing else to practice something different. So I really then pushed the envelope in terms of despite pretty overwhelming fear and risk. I went to early Dennis and just made sure that I'm at the right place at the right time and good altitude over water, and then started to push for the Esfera, for example. I think the Esfera was probably the most the biggest mindfuck and the biggest danger I saw there, for sure, because I could have probably fall into the canopy, and nobody knew back then that it's the easiest maneuver that you can do, because you basically just bring the infinity to an asymmetric position, and the rest is happening automatically. Of course, everybody was overthinking and trying to actually fly the maneuver, piloting the glider through that maneuver, but in fact that was not necessary. And basically, I invented those things for my own entertainment, I guess, and then came that wall. I felt like I hit a wall where I just, with my knowledge back then, I just saw no serious evolution possible for the next at least decade or so, because everything was done already, and I didn't really take this twisted flying so seriously. I mean, I would probably not have expected that it is going to become such a serious style and discipline in Acro. But because then those guys came and they felt the same, right? They came the next generation and they learned all that things that were already out there, and then they were like, okay, now what? So then they started their thing and they developed that direction. So this is cool. This is how we keep evolving. I mean, humanity as a whole, and of course the sports themselves. And,
something I'd like to ask you on that. So, like, everybody has a comfortable side and a non-comfortable side in Acro. I much prefer things to my right. So, for example, for me, a left-hand spiral entry to a right-hand entry into infinite is great, but a right-hand spiral entry to go in left-hand feels completely alien. A left-hand rhythmic sat feels very alien to me. I have a very strong right side, a very weak left side. Do you have a strong side, or how do you deal with your weaker side? I mean, you doing the Aspera, for example, you have to be really strong on both sides to do twister left, twister right, all the maneuvers to the left and right. Did you have a stronger, weaker side? Did you have a side you needed to work on? How did that work for you?
Well, I mean, as soon as you cannot do a maneuver to both directions simultaneously. So that means you, for example, do your first sat or first spiral in your life, then kind of automatically you're gonna pick a direction just by instinct, and automatically that direction is going to become kind of your natural side. But then quickly I discovered, I mean, getting into competitions, it was kind of clear that if you have a preferred side, then it's really, really limiting your options in terms of choreography. And not only that, but basically it keeps you away from becoming better, and it's really limiting your options. And in fact, it's mostly a mind blockage and less a lack of technical knowledge. So it's I think it has more to do with basically our mind, our brain, our body getting used to one kind of movement to one direction, and then when it goes to the other direction you feel super weird, and this is still mainly a mind fuck, and it should be, and I think it should be as soon as possible taken to the next level, and just basically people who are interested in Acro, like seriously, they should basically force themselves of going both ways for not getting into this situation.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Something I always tell my SIV Acro students is always that the quicker you can work on your what we call unnatural side, the less unnatural it feels.
Yeah. In fact, in 2007, I did extremely good. It was 2006. It was 2006. My first Acro World Cup podium in Italy at the Lake Garda in Malcesina, because at that time I was the one who did everything to both sides really clean, and that was a huge advantage. And but coming back, just closing this topic. So after I invented everything, and somehow I felt like, okay, and now there's I had no other like goal to keep me motivated. And in fact, also this is a hardcore business. I mean, if you wanna do competitions at a high level, you have to be in Orgagna for like a few months per summer and be training like crazy. And then somehow I started to feel not motivated enough for that, and basically I quit the scene. And and this is why I like cross country flying so much more, in a manner that it's every time it's different. You're never gonna have this. You're never gonna have the same weather, the same situation, the same conditions, and especially in competitions, it's so much fun, and it's really requiring you to be constantly, making decisions and constantly adopting, and I think it's I don't have the right vocabulary to say what I want to say, but it's just never ending.
No, it's something totally. And like when you were doing, you were really concentrating on the Acro. Was cross country at the time something that interested you, or was that a totally different aspect? It always has been.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, in 2003, I did my first cross-country competition in Slovenia and did my first 100K flight during that competition. So that was already something that was really interesting me. And in Hungary, it is really tricky to practice acro. So basically, I did a lot of cross-country, flatland flying, and I really enjoyed it. It's just that somehow with the friends I had and with Acro, I just found that extra motivation that pulled me a little more towards that side. But I always tried to do a little cross country. I always had some other glider to fly cross countries whenever I could.
Yeah. What's interesting as well is something you said there, which is a question I really want to ask is, when you first came into this, you had a partner, Gabo.
Exactly.
And you two were, you were the team. You were the Just Acro team in terms of the synchro. You guys together. It wasn't just Paul Takats. It was Paul and Gabo. One was the left arm, one was the right arm. Yeah. You guys were this kind of force that came through. You started working on the Just Acro site, which now is a very famous site. It's kind of the number one go-to site for acro pilots. Has been now for a long time. Did it make it easier coming through with someone that you had such a tight connection to, someone that you can kind of rely on, that you can fly with, you can share ideas, motivate each other? Do you think you'd have been as successful as you have been if you didn't have that kind of rock, as it were, as a partner with you, or if you had to do it all on your own, for example?
Yeah, absolutely. It was not only him, but some other friends. But in the end, we both were the most hardcore going into this and giving up more than the others for pushing this direction. In fact, for sure, it was making things easier. It was accelerating our this process of organize ourselves a little more professionally and finding sponsors, and not only that, but learning, because especially, in Hungary back then, nobody really flew acro that we could get help from. So we were a small group of guys pushing and helping each other. When somebody learned something new, then he shared it with the others, and so it was a good support there. And later on, I'm not quite sure that we would have, or I would have, or he would have get the Red Bull sponsorship if it was not for being a team. In fact, somehow that was that extra little bit of bonus that caught their attention, the possibility of sponsoring a team. So it was a big advantage back then, and we without having studied all kinds of things like marketing and sponsorship, and creating presentations and all that kind of stuff, we somehow figured things out, and it was much easier to be brainstorming together than alone.
And to share things. There's a very classic and very famous video of you guys, which for me, it's the one that really shows the strong bond you had together, where you were testing tandem infinity in Oladenez. You were the pilot, Gabo was a passenger, and he was kind of ready with the reserve, that just in case. And you guys enter the infinite, and round it goes, and then all the lines, or the A lines, come out. The whole glider kind of breaks, the lines come away. And instantly, and when you're watching it, and even now, although I've seen the video loads of times, and you still kind of go, oh my God, when it actually happens. Yeah. But the calmness between you, you're prepared for it. Something might happen. It happens. He throws the reserve. You both have a little giggle. You come down, you steer it. You both land nicely. I think it was a Regalo that you had. Yeah. And you both landed nicely on the beach. But it was that trust, that teamwork as well. Exactly. At no point did it ever seem like there was a big drama. It happened, a catastrophic failure. Out comes the reserve, down you go, a little giggle, and you're ready to go again.
Yeah, and this is coming back really to what we talked earlier, right? Like risk management and dealing with fear. Because I came up with the idea of doing Infinity in tandem, and our sponsor back then was able to provide with that glider. But I mean, nobody ever did anything similar before, and we were kind of, I mean, we were super scared, for sure. We were super scared. I mean, of course, that was something really new and very risky to try, and we were not even sure if it was gonna work, or if we were gonna able to stall it out because of the high pressure. You know, anti-rhythmic was not invented back then, so this is what I meant. You want to do something new, something risky. I mean, it doesn't have to be something that extreme, but it's the same procedure. You want to prepare as good as possible, and in this case, you want to have a partner who you can fully trust, and you know who you know. Okay, you know, he's been into these kind of situations before. You don't have to tell him what to do. It's like we are there together. Our life is depending on each other. Yes. So that was. I mean, I probably would have had to think of or search for another or a better person at that moment to do that together with. And so this is how you do everything in order to minimize the risk. And you know, preparing for the worst possible scenario, which this was still not the worst possible scenario. I was way more. I actually never thought of this scenario. We were only thinking about falling into the canopy together. You know, that was all we were thinking. But that we go pretty much into free fall in a snap of a moment. That was something new. And you see in the video how, you know, that reaction is absolutely automated, and this is why I always say that you know, my tutorial series Master Acro is not only for Acro pilots, because these kind of maneuvering skills will teach you a whole different world of skill sets that are so necessary to every pilot to basically have experienced those different emergency situations. Because imagine you are in a cross-country flight and everything is normal, and you know, it's rather relaxing in normal case, right? If you have some experience, it's rather relaxing, but it can go from rather relaxing to life endangering within seconds. And then if you are someone who never actually practice or experience those kind of things in a controlled environment, then you're gonna be freaking out even way more, because not only don't you know what is the right thing to do, but your mind is gonna be kind of, you know, also blocked. And this is probably why certain people in certain situations just have a blockage, a lockout, and you know, spiral into the ground, or don't throw reserve, or just keep on working on it for way too long, and all this kind of stuff. So I was very, very cautious with these kind of things back from the very beginning. So as soon as I realized that, okay, Acro is kind of serious for me, you know, I bought a Rogallo and a harness with 2 reserves, and I went out to the flatlands to get towed up and throw my Rogallo, you know, just to see how it works. So I wanted to know what to expect when I really get into a situation, and I have to use it. And I didn't want to experiment with how to use it when I really need to use it. So, but I wanted to do this way ahead in a controlled environment. I mean, it could have been more controlled if I was over water, but I analyzed the situation long enough to believe that it's probably okay for me to do it over ground. I spoke with people who threw many reserves over ground for like practice, not for emergency. So I was sure that it is possible, but you have to know what to do and how to deal with it.
Absolutely. Totally agree, and that brings me really nicely on to the point of what's been great is having watched you do your thing so successfully in Acro and what have you for so long, is what you're now giving back, not just through the Just Acro site where there's always been a lot of good information, but with the Masters Acro that you've been doing. How can people get hold of it? You know, it's a great way for people not just to learn the maneuvers, but just to learn, as you said, exactly about the safety elements of paragliding. How can they get hold of that, pal?
Yeah, it is a Vimeo-based video instructional tutorials. It's a so-called video on demand. So this is either can be purchased on Vimeo, but I would recommend to visit shop.justacro.com, which is where it is offering some discounted price compared to the Vimeo price. And actually till today there was an extra discount running, but I will probably shut it down tonight or tomorrow morning. There is actually 3 packages for, you know, different pilots who are maybe just starting out and want to know the basic stuff. There's the safety first. It's 1.5 hours long, and there is the basic skills, which include some more maneuvers. It's 2.5 hours long, and then the full on package is over 4 hours and 11 maneuvers. And today actually I started to work on the next maneuver, because I already filmed for 10 more maneuvers, and that is my midterm goal to release all that. So this is kind of became my not only master acro, but my master work. I never studied, I never went to university, but if I went, and I mean, I went to the University of Life, and this is now the result of what I learned during those many years. And I kind of felt like, okay, it would be kind of, kind of bad or sad to just leave acro like I did, you know, stop the competitions and then, you know, and not sharing all the knowledge I learned with so many years of investing so much energy into it and money into it. So that became a nice goal. And I'm really happy with the result. And I think, I mean, there's no other tutorial that would deep dive into such details. And I mean, really, I wanted to create something that I can look at 10 years later or 20 years later and still feel happy about it. Because and the cool thing is, even if I wouldn't feel happy about it, because it's on Vimeo, I can replace the video, or I can add more bits here and there. So it's not like you buy a DVD and then it's the DVD forever, but you can actually be keeping up with the modern world. And I think that's a good format.
The camera angles are brilliant. I've seen it. I think it's great. A lot of my SIV students, as you know, as we've talked about before, really like it. It's a wonderful way of them getting prepared before they actually come on the course and understanding a lot more.
So they actually had students coming to you for SIV who were watching the videos first and came to you for the SIV then.
Yep. It's happened a lot. You know, I remember speaking to you last year. I had a couple of guys on the course, and it made a big difference. They already understood a bit about the maneuver, mentally prepared for what I was telling them, how to deal with the safety element. And you know, there's a lot of pressure when you come to do a maneuver for the first time. But if you've had a little chance to break it down in your mind, to go over it, you know, to visualize it, it makes the actual doing of it a lot more simpler. You're a lot more prepared for the situation. So I think it's a really helpful thing for people to do before they go on a course. And just for their, like you say, for their general flying, to be prepared, to know what to do, to not be worried, to think about what if it goes wrong. You know, if it goes wrong, we want to know we're prepared. If we feel confident, then we're going to fly better because we're confident. Half the time when things go wrong, it's because we're flying very nervously, because we're worried about things happening. We're not really in control of the glider because we're a little bit scared of it. If we're confident with our glider, actually, that really helps to stop things going wrong in the first place.
Exactly. We are on the same page.
Yeah, I think it's great. I would highly recommend it to anyone listening now. And then, so, you know, what does the power? I mean, I know now you're out in Colombia. As I said, I saw you there. We spoke a little bit about it before. You were doing the Red Bull Air Race stuff. You know, you've been a very busy boy since you stopped the professional Acro stuff. But what is? I mean, after all these years, first of all, do you still love flying like you did? I mean, I've been flying now 13, 14 years, and I still love it. I haven't flown, pal, since a couple of days after I saw you. It's been 3 months.
Oh
And
my
I've not
God!
flown, and
Yeah.
it is killing me. Do you still love flying? You know, do you still go up there and get super excited?
Yeah, of course. I mean, for example, yesterday I was super exciting, but it doesn't need to be an acro flight. It could have been a hike and fly, easy flight down, and I would still have loved it. But of course, as you already mentioned, the motivation is changing over time, and also what fulfills your need and your desire is also changing. So. You know, right now I'm not, nervous if I cannot go up to fly every day. And in fact, now here I'm living in a camping, and in fact, most of the time people go to fly, and it's pretty quiet, and then I do my work and sometimes step out and see many people flying, and of course then sometimes I feel like I want to go, and sometimes I do go, but I don't have to go to have a good day. And I'm now, I think I'm more focused on on the competition, cross country flying, which is where I find most of my motivation these days, because and I think this is the most important fact, because I see the most learning potential in my state, in this state of my career. I see the most learning potential going to high level competitions. And that's probably why it makes so much fun, because there is so much to learn. I still doing big mistakes, and that's really pissing me off. And that's so that's cool.
So where is Takats going now? Where do you see yourself? Because you're clearly an athlete that has to push themselves. Is it going to be the cross country? Where do you see yourself going over the next however many years that we're lucky enough to still be in this sport?
Definitely I'm shifting from pushing boundaries, professional athlete to, I'm still an athlete, but I'm not with Red Bull anymore. So I'm not, let's say, pushed into doing certain things through those kind of contracts. But so this is why I can now more freely choose my path, and it feels like that path is going towards education more. I really like this video project, Master Acro. I'm happy with it, and I want to keep working on it. And I have another even bigger project coming up, but I don't want to talk about it yet because it's just too early. I'm already working on something that is probably going to determine my my next few years. And I really want to keep up the fun and the joy I find in paragliding, and so for me, for example, this is why I don't want to work for a school anymore, or I don't want to work as a full-time tandem pilot, or I don't want to work as a test pilot, because I think that those are let's say 9-to-5 jobs in paragliding that you can still make a good living with, but then you overextend your flying to in ways that are not necessarily giving you the experience that why I love this sport. And I don't want to lose motivation for flying, and this is also why I stopped the Acro competition, because I had the experience in my life before, all that we talked about earlier, the fencing, the caving, the e-gaming, and so on, that I jumped on things with full motivations, like multiple times in my life, to then leave it as quick as I picked it up. So I at that point in 2011, when I won the second overall World Cup title, then I stopped, and I was a little bit like, okay, but if I keep going that way that I did before, then probably I feared that I was going to end up like burning out in Acro and not wanting to fly anymore and find something else instead.
Yeah.
But then instead of that, so I quit that, but I kept flying, and then I already had picked up on a bunch of other sports on the side, and I think that's pretty cool, because in all those sports I'm kind of a beginner, so it is always something to learn, and it's cool to do other things, to mix it up a little bit, like kiting, like climbing and stuff like that. Base jumping, not so much anymore. But yeah, in 10 years I hope to have achieved enough to have a relaxing life, and to build a fundament for the rest of my life. And I still cannot say if I will spend more time in Colombia or not. There is a possibility to move there full time, but at the moment I don't feel like that. At the moment it's okay, half. It's the same thing, like I think if you overdo something, then it can become boring, and this is the key is to find the right balance somewhere.
Yes. Brilliant, Paul. Amazing. I love that the candidness of what you've spoken through this interview has been amazing, to actually kind of get to know the real Paul, not just the Paul on the podium or the Paul in the air, to actually get to know the Paul Takats, which is you, which is the person, the human being behind the helmet, behind the Red Bull stickers and what have you. I absolutely love it. Now, there's a little bit of fun before we wrap up the interview. There's a little bit of fun that we have. We have a section to wrap it up called On the Spot.
Okay.
So I've got a couple of questions for you, and I've also got a how well do you know yourself? Now, we'll come to that in a minute. But the first question I have for you is, do you have a nickname?
Well, Paco, but very few people call me like this. Some close friends from Hungary call me Paco.
No, okay. And that's something that's been before paragliding, before anything. That's something between you and your friends.
You mean a nickname?
Yeah. That nickname Paco, is it been between paragliding friends, or just friends back in school, back in your old life?
The small version of Pal is Polika. They used to call me a lot for a long time Polika, because I used to be smaller and smaller than same guys from my age. So that was kind of sticking for a while, and for some people it's still sticking around.
Okay. Now then, the favorite flight that you've flown. The favorite site that you've flown. So you've flown a lot of sites around the world. Can you think of a favorite site? Is it the one that is in your back garden, for example?
Oh my God, I hate these kind of questions, because usually I always answer that I don't, because it's not so much about the flying site itself, but a lot more, everything around it, and the country and the culture and a lot more than just the flying site itself. But for sure, Pichincha is it needs to be on the top, somewhere in the top of the list, because the mountains are beautiful and smells I like and certain stuff. But in general, I don't like to answer this favorite site question. Because at the same time, when I go back to Hungary to my well-known old, small, really low flying sites, I feel so happy, and I feel like a child being able to play again the same spots and playing the same top landing games. So yeah, next question.
Perfect, no trouble. What would be your top tip for a new pilot? What would be your top bit of advice you could give?
Learn to control your canopy that we already talked about, ground handling and maneuvering. I mean, I would recommend to buy my Master Acro series for sure. And and be honest with yourself and don't, jump progression steps, because this is a very, very typical mistake that so many people do. It can be, if we talk about acro, it's trying a maneuver that you're not ready for, or if we talk about general flying, cross-country flying, is jumping on a glider that you're not ready for. Because many people feel like, oh, I need now I need a sea glider because I want to fly my first 100K, and that's so wrong that we better not get into that conversation now. But know yourself and practice as much as you can on the ground, because that's going to save you a lot of sketchy moments in the air and on takeoff.
Yeah, absolutely. Very, very well said. The next question is an interesting one for me, and I think maybe you've answered it earlier on in the interview. But question is, Acro or XC?
Both.
There you go. Brilliant.
You need both. One does not go without the other one. But the thing is, when you mention Acro, then people think infinity and all that crazy stuff. But it's people have to realize that Acro is glider control, is mastering your canopy in the air. So how can you go cross country flying and flying to lee side rotors and all that crazy stuff without actually being able to do a nice tail slide, to be able to stress free control your canopy in those kind of situations. And this is why so many people overreact in those situations and get into even more trouble, like they stall their glider when they get a collapse, or that's a very typical one, or don't react the right way or not at all. So we already talked about many of these things. I think for a good pilot, both of them is really necessary. Look at Kriegel Maurer, look at Felix Rodriguez, look at many other guys who are good in both disciplines, and they are so much more safer and so much more confident pilot, and they know their own limits so much more better. That is really the key.
Brilliant. Perfect answer. I totally agree, pal. Yeah, perfect answer to that one. The last one is, what's your favorite paragliding gadget? Do you have one? So gadget is instrument or anything like that.
A gadget, an instrument.
Is there anything that you could not leave your front door with in the morning to go flying without?
Oh, Jesus.
Some people say they're P-tube, they're XCP.
Oh, yeah, that's it. Thank you. That's it. I mean, if it's about long flights, I never again will go without. I mean, people are so naive and so stupid about this P-tube, because I still have friends who fly cross country for ages, and they are like, "Oh, I don't need that. I have a bottle." And then, what? And then you want to go and play with the bottle in the middle of the flight. It's so dangerous. It's so stupid. And it takes some time to learn how to use the P-tube properly. But then, man, it's gonna change your flying absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you for helping out. That was a good answer.
Glad to be of help. Now, the last one is how well do you know yourself? So what I'm going to do, Pat, I'm just going to play a clip of music to you. And I want to see if you recognize this clip of music, and if you can tell me where it's from, and even more, if it's not giving too much away, from what sequence it's from. Are you ready?
Sure.
Here we go.
That's exciting. Yeah, that's the Evolution video.
Excellent, well done. Right, that's 1 point. It's a cracking trap. It's from the Evolution video. What sequence is it from? What part of the movie? What's going on in that part of the movie?
It is the action part where I'm doing all the new tricks.
Well done. Absolutely, it is. Let me just play that again.
You have more?
I only have that one, actually. And I am bobbing my head. I'm going to have a little dance to it myself. It is probably, for me, one of the best sequences in any paragliding movies that have been out there. It's a great track to use alongside it. And there have been so many times I've been walking around bars in Oladenez in the busy season where I've heard this coming out of people's laptops and they've been watching the video and using it it's just a beautiful sequence of you doing your thing. The music fits so well to it. And congratulations, you've got double points on that. It's lovely to know you know your own movies. Well done.
Thank you. That's so cool.
Pal, it has been an absolute pleasure. I really, really appreciate how candid, how honest you've been on this interview. As I said before, I can't believe how much the world and our lives have changed since we saw each other last in February. Hopefully things will get back to normal before long. But it's been an absolute pleasure, buddy. I really, really appreciate it. So on behalf of everyone listening to this as well, it's been superb hearing from you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Lee.
Thank you, buddy. Speak soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
So there we go. Thank you ever so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed it. We've got a lot more content coming your way. We're trying really hard here to improve the production that we're making. I've got to give a massive shout out to Niall Harvey. He's come on board to help me with the technical stuff. We've got a lot of good content coming your way, but more of that later. Thanks ever so much for tuning in today, and we will catch you on the next edition of the Paragliding Debrief.